The stars above Earth were peaceful that night. Ships drifted quietly in orbit, and cities glowed like constellations scattered across the dark side of the planet. For the first time in decades, humanity had known calm. No wars, no famine, no fear. The dream of a united world had finally been reached. And then the sky burned. They came without warning, silver spears tearing through the atmosphere, lighting up the night over the Pacific. At first, people thought it was another meteor storm, until the clouds caught fire, until the oceans boiled, until the first orbital station went silent. The Vracal Empire had arrived. To them, Earth was a backwater world, barely stepping into the stars, easy prey. Their high command called it a pacification campaign. One fleet, 12 ships. Enough, they said, to teach the humans their place. The invasion began in the silence of space, where no one could scream. One moment, Luna Base was transmitting weather data. The next, it was gone, erased in a pulse of plasma hotter than the sun. The International Space Dock followed, its crew of 600 turned to dust. By the time governments on Earth understood what was happening, it was already too late. The Vracal ships were in orbit, and their voices echoed across every open frequency. Primitive species of Sol, you are now under the protection of the Vracal Empire. Do not resist. Your compliance will be rewarded. Disobedience will not be tolerated. Their message was calm, polite even. But when Beijing refused to surrender, the Vracal answered with light. In seconds, a single beam erased 10 square kilometers of the city. When New York retaliated with missiles, they were intercepted mid-flight, atomized before reaching the atmosphere. The world fell into panic. But amidst the chaos, in a bunker beneath the ruins of Geneva, a human general spoke 3 quiet words over the global defense network. Hold the line. No one knew where the phrase came from. No one needed to. It spread like wildfire across the planet, between soldiers, civilians, engineers, and pilots. It was whispered on the lips of dying Marines in orbit. It was painted on walls and armor. It became humanity's heartbeat. Hold the line. The Vracal didn't understand it. They had fought hundreds of species before, some strong, some defiant. But none of them fought like this. None of them refused to surrender, even when the odds were meaningless. On the 3rd day, when the Vracal began landing operations, they expected submission. Instead, they met resistance, human resistance. In the ruins of Old Sydney, a battalion of soldiers held their ground for 21 hours against walking war machines 3 stories tall. They used old rifles, improvised explosives, and the kind of courage no data file could measure. When the last of them fell, the city still burned around them. But so did 3 of the alien walkers. On the Arctic front, miners from abandoned colonies turned their drills into railguns. On Mars, a small outpost of scientists repurposed cargo ships into kamikaze drones. In every corner of humanity's reach, someone stood and fought, not for victory, not even for survival. They fought because surrender was unthinkable. The Vracal commander, Admiral Torash, watched it unfold with disbelief. His subordinates begged him to end it quickly, to glass the planet and be done with it. But Torash hesitated. The humans fascinated him. Their technology was crude, their weapons archaic, but they fought with precision and fire. When he looked into their transmissions, into their faces, he saw something he didn't understand, a light in their eyes, a kind of madness. He didn't realize what it was. Not yet. It was hope. Far below, in the command center of the Terran Defense Network, General Elaine Ward stared at the holomap. Half of Earth's defense satellites were gone. Every known orbital cannon was silent. But she didn't give the order to surrender. "Ma'am," one of her officers said quietly, "we've lost Asia. Africa's dark. We have maybe 40 ships left that can fight. What are we even holding the line for?" Ward's voice was steady. "For each other." She pressed her hand on the table and spoke into the transmitter. Her message would go to every remaining defense point in the system. "If you can hear me, this is Earth Command. The enemy thinks we are broken. They think we are done, but they have never fought us before. They don't know what it means to be human. We don't fight for power. We don't fight for empire. We fight for home. Hold the line." That was the day humanity stopped being prey. Something changed in the following hours. Across the surviving colonies, Engineers worked without rest. They rewired weapons, refitted transports, and turned every satellite into a makeshift defense drone. AI networks that once ran weather control were reprogrammed for combat targeting. The humans didn't have enough ships or enough time, but they had will, and that was enough to scare even the stars. On the edge of the system, a small fleet, 6 old warships, gathered under the command of Captain Aaron Locke. Their hulls were scorched, their engines unreliable. Against them waited the Vrackle fleet, polished, perfect, untouchable. The humans didn't plan to win. They planned to hurt them. Locke's flagship, the UNS Resolute, charged straight into the enemy formation. Every ship followed, engines burning red-hot. When the Vrackle opened fire, 3 human ships vanished instantly, but the rest pressed on, through the storm, through the light. The Resolute rammed a cruiser twice its size. Its reactor went critical. The explosion blinded sensors for miles. When the light faded, both ships were gone. From the chaos came a single human transmission, static and broken, but clear enough to reach every soldier on Earth. "We're still here. Keep fighting. Hold the line." In the Vrackle War Council, silence fell. The humans were supposed to surrender. Instead, they had destroyed 4 ships and crippled 2 more. Admiral Torash stood before the stars and felt something new creeping up his spine, something he had never felt in centuries of conquest. It was fear. He looked again at the small blue planet below, burning yet unbroken. The humans were not advanced, they were not powerful, they were desperate. And desperation, he realized, was the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. The Vrackle sent one final ultimatum to Earth Command. Surrender, and they would stop the bombing. Humanity's answer was short and simple. Come and take it. That was the spark, the moment the galaxy would later remember as the beginning of the Sol Wars. No one told the Vrackle what humans could do. No one warned them that when pushed to the edge, humans didn't break, they evolved. And as the fires of Earth rose to meet the stars, one thing became certain. Humanity was not done yet. The 3rd week after the invasion, Earth burned in silence. Cities were ash and smoke, oceans turned black with wreckage. Yet above the planet, somewhere in the dark between the stars, a spark remained alive. The Vrackle fleet held orbit, watching, waiting for surrender. But it never came. Admiral Torash stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vrackle Dominant, staring down at the wounded planet. Reports came in one after another: scattered resistance, human sabotage, missing patrols. He dismissed them all, primitive uprisings, nothing more. But then came the whisper that changed everything. A human warship had entered subspace. Torash almost laughed. Humans had no slip drive capability. Their ships barely reached Mars before overheating. Yet sensors didn't lie, something had just emerged from folded space near Neptune's orbit. A single contact, small, slow, alone. He ordered an interception. The ship appeared on Vrackle screens as a small, angular shape, human in design, but wrong. It carried the markings of the United Nations fleet, but it didn't match any known model. It drifted silently, dark and cold, as if it were dead. "Identify yourself," the Vrackle hailed. No reply. "This is restricted space. Power down and prepare for boarding." Still nothing. Then, without warning, the human ship's lights flickered on, rows of glowing white eyes in the dark. And for a brief moment, the name on its hull came into view. UNS Vigilant Dawn. The Vigilant Dawn was a miracle of desperation. It wasn't built in a shipyard. It was assembled in orbit from the bones of old stations and forgotten transports. Every part of it screamed defiance. Its engines were experimental, its weapons stolen from alien wrecks, its crew volunteers with nothing left to lose. Captain Myra Hale sat in the command chair, fingers shaking on the controls. The ship hummed like a living thing, angry and awake. Around her, the crew waited, breath held. "Status?" she asked quietly. "Engines holding," her engineer replied. "Weapons ready." Myra looked at the hollow of the enemy fleet closing in, a dozen cruisers, polished and perfect. She thought of Earth below, burning, of the screams that filled the comms when Luna fell. And then she said, "Fire." The first shot wasn't plasma. It wasn't even energy. It was a tungsten rod, 3 meters long, accelerated by magnetic rails to near light speed. Primitive, simple, terrifying. The Vrackle never saw it coming. The projectile hit a cruiser dead center. Shields meant for plasma beams didn't even register the impact. The rod passed through the ship like a god's finger, punching a hole straight through the hull, through decks, through command centers, then out the other side. The cruiser broke apart in silence. The second rod hit before the first debris stopped spinning. And then a third. And then chaos. Vrackle ships scrambled, firing wildly into the void. Plasma streaks filled the dark, lighting up the human ship like lightning. But the vigilant dawn danced between them, engines burning hotter than they were ever meant to. Her crew moved like one heartbeat, reloading, recalibrating, rerouting power. They weren't fighting to survive. They were fighting to hurt them. "Target shields are adapting," someone shouted. "Then aim where they don't have shields," Myra replied. "Keep firing." The next barrage came from all guns. Dozens of metal slugs streaked through the dark, invisible until they hit. Another Vrackle ship died, and another. On the flagship Dominant, Admiral Torash gripped the rail, disbelief twisting his face. How are they doing this?" he hissed. "They have no energy signatures, no FTL emissions. It's kinetic," his aide replied. "Kinetic, that's impossible." And yet it was. By the time the Vigilant Dawn's railguns overheated, 4 alien cruisers were gone. 2 more drifted, silent and broken. But the human ship was dying too. Its hull was cracked, its reactors bleeding radiation. Inside, the crew worked through alarms and smoke. "Captain, we've lost engine 2. Then fly with 1. Shield generators down. Then don't get hit." Myra Hale's voice never wavered. She knew they wouldn't make it home, but that wasn't the point. She wanted the Vrackle to remember. When the enemy regrouped, she gave her final order. "All remaining power to the reactor. Prepare for overdrive." Her navigator stared at her. "Captain, that will." "I know," she said softly. She turned her eyes toward Earth, a small blue dot in the distance. "Let's give them a sunrise they'll never forget." The Vigilant Dawn's reactor surged past every safety limit. The ship's hull screamed as it accelerated, diving straight toward the heart of the Vrackle formation. The aliens opened fire, all weapons, all directions, but the human ship didn't stop. It burned through plasma and light, cutting through the dark like a falling star. When it hit the Vrackle Dominant, the explosion was so bright it could be seen from Mars. Half the fleet vanished in the flash. On Earth, in a bunker buried deep under the Rockies, General Elaine Ward stared at the incoming transmission. A broken, static-filled voice came through the noise. "This is the Vigilant Dawn. Mission complete. Tell them we held the line." Then silence. No one spoke for a long time. Ward stood, her jaw trembling, her hand pressed against the cold metal of the table. She looked at the stars on the screen, the empty place where the Vrackle fleet had been, and whispered, "God help whoever's next." In orbit among the wreckage of twisted alien steel, fragments of the Vigilant Dawn drifted, glowing faintly against the void. A single human flag, burned, torn, but still whole, floated among the debris. The message spread fast, across every resistance cell, every hidden bunker, every surviving colony. The dawn hit back. It became a rallying cry. Children whispered it in the ruins. Soldiers painted it on their armor. Engineers carved it into metal walls. The dawn hit back. The Vrackle command was in chaos. Entire sectors fell silent, shipyards locked down. Their emperor demanded answers. "How did this happen?" he roared. "How did one primitive vessel destroy an entire fleet?" But no one could answer. Their sensors had recorded everything: the human ship, the impact, the reactor detonation. Yet none of their logic explained how a species barely capable of interplanetary travel could pull this off. The data was clear. The humans had somehow built a slip-capable warship in under a year, using salvaged alien tech and impossible engineering. It defied every law they knew. And worse, every surviving officer from the battle reported the same thing. The humans didn't retreat, they didn't run, they charged. For the first time in its long history, the Vrackle Empire hesitated. They reinforced their borders. They doubled their fleets. They sent spies into human space to learn what had gone wrong. But by the time they acted, it was already too late. Humanity was no longer rebuilding. They were preparing. In secret shipyards orbiting Mars and Titan, thousands of engineers worked without rest. Factories roared. AI systems evolved into war planners. New ships were being born, faster, stronger, and built for vengeance. The Vigilant Dawn had been humanity's first retaliation. It wouldn't be the last. Far beyond Neptune, where the light of the sun was dim and cold, another slip-space distortion flickered. A new human warship emerged, sleek, dark, silent. Its hull bore no name, its mission was simple. Revenge. And in that moment, somewhere in the heart of the galaxy, a warning spread quietly between alien civilizations. No one told the Vrackle what humans could do. They were learning now. The hard way. The galaxy had grown quiet. Too quiet. Months had passed since the destruction of the Vrackle fleet, and yet no new invasion came. The Empire withdrew its ships from human space, too afraid to test the unknown. But deep inside Saul's shadow, humanity was not resting. They were building. Hidden beneath the storms of Jupiter and the ice of Titan, engineers worked day and night. They built ships from the wrecks of fallen enemies, wired alien technology into human steel, and rewrote physics with stubbornness alone. They didn't call these ships warships. They called them revenants because they were born from the dead. The galaxy would soon call them something else. Ghosts. Admiral Elaine Ward stood on the deck of the UNS Retribution, the largest vessel ever built by human hands. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished glass of the viewing dome. Tired eyes, silver hair, uniform scarred with burn marks. She'd been at war too long, everyone had. Her second-in-command, Captain Rao, approached quietly. "Fleet reports ready, ma'am. All 12 ships have completed slipcore synchronization." Ward nodded, eyes still on the stars. "Do you believe in ghosts, Captain?" Rao frowned. "Not the kind that float through walls, Admiral." Ward's lips curved faintly. "You should, because today that's what we're becoming." Each ship in the Sol Defense Armada was a nightmare of innovation. Their slip drives weren't alien copies, they were improvements. Human scientists had fused alien core principles with Earth's brutal engineering. What emerged wasn't elegant. It was unpredictable, dangerous, almost alive. When these ships entered folded space, sensors couldn't track them. They vanished completely, no heat, no energy, no trace. And when they reappeared, it was already too late for whoever was in their sights. Humanity had learned the lesson of survival. Never wait to be attacked again. The first mission came 2 days later. Intel had located a Vrackle logistics hub orbiting a barren moon in the Vale sector. It wasn't a fortress, just a refueling station, a perfect target. The Ghost fleet gathered silently in orbit over Pluto. 12 ships, black and angular, humming like thunder in the cold dark. Ward's voice echoed through the command channels. "They came to our home and thought we would break. Let's show them what breaking looks like." "Slip sequence engaged," came the reply. And then the fleet disappeared. For 3 hours, the galaxy thought nothing had happened. Then, over the moon of Teshar, the stars tore open. The Vrackle station sensors screamed warnings, but it was already too late. The humans appeared out of nowhere. No jump signatures, no warnings, just 12 black shadows slipping from the void. The first volley wasn't light, it was metal. Dozens of tungsten rods, rail-accelerated and invisible until impact, ripped through the station's core. Explosions flared like a sunrise. Fuel lines ignited. In seconds, the entire structure fell apart. The Vrackle ships in orbit tried to respond, but their targeting systems couldn't lock on. Every time they fired, the humans were gone again, slipping in and out of folded space like phantoms. On the comms, terrified Vrackle officers screamed. They vanish between shots, they're not there." It wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. When the attack ended, only debris remained. No survivors, no wreckage that could explain how the humans had done it. The Vrackle called it the Ghost Strike. And it was only the beginning. Within weeks, human ships hit across the entire front. Fuel stations, supply routes, convoys gone. Entire fleets reported seeing shadows that appeared and disappeared in the dark. The attacks were precise, fast, merciless. No transmissions, no warnings, only death. When alien patrols scanned for heat signatures, they found nothing. When they looked for energy trails, nothing. When they finally caught a glimpse of one on radar, it would fade like smoke. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. The humans have become ghosts. In the command citadel of the Vrackle Empire, panic took root. Admiral Torash stood before the Emperor, head bowed low. His once golden armor was scratched and blackened from battle. "You promised me victory," the Emperor growled. His voice was like grinding metal. "You said they were primitive." "They were," Torash whispered. "But they learned too fast. We took their world, and they took our technology and made it worse." "Worse?" "Yes," Torash said, raising his eyes. "Because they don't use it for control or power, they use it for revenge." Meanwhile, in the hidden dockyards of Mars, the ghosts returned home. Their hulls were scarred and glowing faintly from slip radiation. Crews stepped out exhausted, some too weak to stand. But their eyes were fierce. Captain Rao stood beside Admiral Ward as they watched the retribution land. He whispered, "They'll come for us next." Ward nodded, "Let them, we're ready." She wasn't lying. Every surviving colony was now a fortress. Every shipyard built warships day and night. AI war engines calculated enemy movements faster than any alien strategist could dream. Humanity wasn't just defending anymore, they were expanding. In the following months, 3 empires fell. The Scar Dominion, who had allied with the Vrackle, lost half their navy in a single night. Their own admirals defected, terrified of the shadows that appeared out of nowhere and tore through their ships. The Council of Keth refused to shelter Vrackle refugees. Their reason was simple. "We will not anger the ghosts." The galaxy began to change. The humans had become a myth, something between soldiers and monsters. No one knew how many ships they had or where they came from. They struck without pattern, without mercy, and vanished again into the void. One night, somewhere beyond the reach of any sun, a Vrackle commander named Saren recorded a final log before his ship was destroyed. His words would later be broadcast across the galaxy, a warning to all. "They don't fight like we do, they don't think like we do. We hide behind shields, they turn their ships into weapons. We fight for victory, they fight because we gave them no choice. They are not ghosts, they are the consequence of our arrogance. If you see a human ship, pray it doesn't see you first." Seconds later, his transmission ended in static. Back on Earth, Admiral Ward received the intercepted message. She watched it in silence. Around her, the command deck was dark except for the glow of a single holographic map. Red dots marked fallen enemy worlds. One of her aides asked, "Should we send a message back?" Ward shook her head. "No," she said softly, "let the silence speak for us." In the months that followed, the galaxy learned to live with fear. Trade routes changed. Empires fortified their borders. Some worlds shut themselves off completely, hoping the humans would never find them. But fear has a sound. It hums beneath the stars. And whenever a new empire rose, that hum grew louder until every ruler whispered the same truth. No one told us what the humans could do. And deep in the cold dark of the solar system, the retribution drifted silently. Its crew stood ready for the next command. Admiral Ward stared into the endless night and spoke softly to herself. "We held the line, now we move it." The war had turned. For the first time in galactic history, the Vrackle Empire, the oldest and strongest power in the Orion Arm, was afraid. Their fleets no longer ventured into human space. Their convoys traveled in silence, lights dimmed, terrified of being seen. Their generals whispered about the ghost ships, the human war machines that appeared from nowhere and left nothing but ashes. But humanity was not satisfied with fear. Fear was not justice. Fear was not enough. They wanted vengeance. From the hidden shipyards orbiting Mars, the Terran War Armada gathered, 50 ships, forged in silence and fueled by rage. Each one was a fortress of steel and willpower, every cannon polished and waiting. At their center stood the flagship UNS Vengeance, a city-sized dreadnought that hummed with energy like a living heart. Admiral Elaine Ward stood on its bridge, her gaze fixed on the image of a distant star cluster. Her voice, calm but cold, carried through the fleet's comms. "We have mourned enough, we have bled enough. Now it's their turn to remember who we are." The target was Ortash Prime, the Vrackle homeworld. It was a world of cities carved into mountains, of golden towers and glowing seas. For centuries it had stood untouchable. Every war had ended before it ever reached their skis. Until now. The journey took 6 days. 6 days of silence through folded space. 6 days of anticipation and fear and trembling hands. When the fleet emerged, the Vrackle home system filled every view. 4 moons, 3 orbital rings, 2 planetary shields. And 1 world shining in arrogance. The Vrackle defense grid activated immediately. Thousands of guns lit up across the orbitals, ready to strike. But when the first human ship appeared, their targeting systems went blind. Every sensor, every array, every scanner, all went dark in an instant. The humans had unleashed something new. Project Black Sun, an AI weapon that turned enemy networks into chaos. The Vrackle commanders shouted into the comms. "We're blind, they've jammed the array." "How they can't? They already have." The first bombardment came from orbit. The Vengeance fired its primary railgun, a weapon longer than a city, accelerating a tungsten spear the size of a building. The shot hit the first orbital ring. The explosion was so massive that its shockwave ignited the upper atmosphere of the nearest moon. The second shot followed, then the third. In minutes, Ortash Prime's proud sky fortress was gone, its debris raining fire over their own cities. Ward watched from the bridge, her face pale in the flickering light. There was no triumph in her eyes, only sorrow. "Fire control," she said softly. "Target their command network." "Yes, Admiral." Another flash, another impact. The world below screamed. On the surface, the Vrackle Emperor stood on his balcony, staring at the burning horizon. His palace shook with every blast. For centuries, he had ruled through fear. Now, for the first time, he felt it. His aides begged him to flee, but he refused. Pride chained him in place. This is not possible," he whispered. "They are primitives, they cannot." A blast tore through the palace before he could finish. The shockwave threw him to the floor, shattering the marble beneath his feet. Above, the sky was red with fire. From orbit, human marines dropped through the flames, storm commandos in black armor, descending like meteors. They hit the surface in coordinated strikes, each one leading hundreds of drones and autonomous tanks. Their orders were simple. Disable the command centers, secure the orbital uplinks, leave no weapon behind. The Vrackle resisted. Their armies were vast, their weapons advanced. But they had never fought soldiers like these. Humans moved through the ruins like phantoms, silent, ruthless, unstoppable. Every building they entered fell within minutes. Every tank that fired at them vanished under railfire. In the capital, a Vrackle general shouted into his radio. "They're not soldiers, they're machines." The human commander replied through the same channel, voice steady and cold. "No, we're what you made us." The battle lasted 19 hours. When it ended, Ortash Prime was unrecognizable. The oceans boiled, the cities burned. And above it all, the UNS Vengeance hung in the sky like a silent god. Admiral Ward stood before the command screen, her crew waiting. "Status?" she asked. "Planetary defenses neutralized," said Rao. "Resistance collapsing, they're asking for surrender." Ward's hands tightened behind her back. She could still hear the screams from Earth's invasion, the voices of children, of soldiers, of the dying. Her voice was calm. "Transmit this message. To the Vrackle Empire. You came to our home uninvited. You killed our people, you called us lesser. You left us with no choice but to become what you feared. This is not conquest, this is consequence." And then softly, fire the last salvo. The final strike came from orbit, a rain of tungsten fire, each rod falling faster than light could chase it. They didn't aim for armies or fortresses. They aimed for symbols, palaces, towers, monuments. Each one shattered in blinding light. And as the fires spread, humanity turned away. In the aftermath, the galaxy went silent. The Vrackle fleet surrendered without a fight. Their colonies begged for peace. Their empire crumbled under the weight of fear. The Ghost fleet returned to Sol with no victory parade, no cheering crowds, only silence. They had won, but victory felt like a wound that would never heal. Admiral Ward walked the observation deck alone, watching Earth rise through the viewport. Her reflection looked older than she remembered. Captain Rao approached her quietly. "It's over," he said. Ward shook her head. "It's never over. They'll remember what we did today, and so will we." Rao was silent for a moment, then he asked, was it worth it? Ward didn't answer, she just whispered, "They'll never touch our home again." And somewhere far across the stars, the echoes of the fallen whispered back. No one told them what humans could do. The fires of Ortash Prime burned for 9 days. When the last flame died, the Vrackle Empire was gone. Their fleets were shattered, their cities turned to dust. What remained of their people hid in the ruins, whispering the same name over and over. Humans. Across the galaxy, silence fell. Empires that once called themselves mighty now watched the stars in fear. Trade halted, armies stood still. The old order had ended. A new power had risen from the ashes. And its flag bore the mark of Earth. On the deck of the UNS Vengeance, Admiral Elaine Ward stood before the great viewport, staring down at the burned world below. The battle was won, but the victory was heavy in her heart. Her reflection looked hollow, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Around her, the bridge was quiet. Only the hum of engines filled the air. Captain Rao entered quietly, holding a datapad. "Transmission from the Galactic Council," he said. "They want to negotiate." Ward didn't turn. Negotiate what? Peace or surrender, they're not sure which it should be. Ward closed her eyes for a moment. She'd been waiting for this, for the galaxy to finally understand. "Prepare the transmission," she said softly. "Let's see what fear looks like when it tries to speak." The Galactic Council gathered 3 days later on the neutral world of Valor. It was a planet of glass cities and silver towers, where for centuries peace had been discussed among the stars. Now the halls were full of silence and trembling. Representatives from 27 species filled the great chamber. Some had fought beside the Vrackle. Some had stayed neutral. None dared oppose the humans now. And when the human delegation entered, the air itself seemed to grow colder. Admiral Ward led the group. No crown, no robe, no armor, just her black uniform and the scar of war across her cheek. Behind her walked captains, soldiers, and scientists. No diplomats. Humanity didn't need them anymore. The Vrackle representative, a thin, broken figure wrapped in bandages, rose to speak first. His voice trembled. "You destroyed our world. You ended our fleets. Was this justice or vengeance?" Ward looked at him for a long moment, then said, "Both." The council fell silent. Every eye turned to her. Ward stepped forward, her voice steady, her words sharp as glass. "When you came to our home, you called us primitive. You burned our cities and called it mercy. You said we were beneath you. But we learned. We built. We survived. And now you understand what that means." A representative from the Keth Alliance rose nervously. "Human Admiral, the galaxy seeks peace. We must rebuild together. Surely you." Ward interrupted him. "Peace? You speak of peace after what your kind watched and did nothing. When Earth burned, you sat in these same halls and debated trade routes." The Keth fell silent. Ward turned to the assembly, her voice rising, not in rage but in conviction. "You all saw what happened, and you all thought we would die quietly. But humanity doesn't die quietly. We fight until the stars go dark." A murmur spread through the chamber. Some species lowered their heads, others trembled. Ward raised her hand, and the hollow table in the center of the room came to life. A map of the galaxy flickered into view, one half still glowing in alien colors, the other now marked in blue. Human blue. "These are the worlds that joined us willingly. These are the colonies that asked for our protection. You thought we came to conquer. We came to end the age of tyrants." Someone from the Zath coalition hissed, "You've become what you fought. You rule through fear." Ward's reply was calm, almost gentle. "Fear keeps predators away. You taught us that." When the debate ended, the council had no choice. Humanity's demands were clear. The Vrackle Empire would be dismantled. No fleet would enter Sol's space without permission. All species would sign the Treaty of Ash and Iron, pledging never again to attack a rising world. It was not a request, it was an order. And no one dared refuse. The signing took 6 hours. One by one, trembling hands and claws and tendrils touched the digital seal, marking the moment the galaxy bent its knee to humankind. When it was done, Ward stood at the head of the table. Her words echoed through the hall and into history. This is not a peace born of kindness. It is peace born of consequence. You will not forget what we are capable of. And if you do, look to Ortash Prime. That night, as the council chambers emptied and the stars turned red over Vaylor's horizon, Admiral Ward remained alone. Captain Rao found her standing by the window, watching the distant lights of alien ships leaving orbit. "It's done," he said quietly. "They've all signed." Ward didn't answer at first. Her hands rested behind her back, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "When I was a child," she said softly, "my mother told me humanity would one day reach the stars. She said we'd meet new life, make friends among the galaxies." She looked down, her voice turning to ash. She never imagined this. Rao lowered his head. "We did what we had to." Ward nodded slowly. "Yes, but every time I close my eyes, I still see them. The cities, the faces, the fires. We've become the monsters they feared." Rao hesitated, then said, "Maybe monsters are what the galaxy needs." Ward turned to him, her eyes hard again. "Maybe, but monsters don't get to rest." Months passed. The Treaty of Ash and Iron reshaped everything. The United Terran Dominion rose as a new power, spanning hundreds of worlds. Human patrols moved through alien space, keeping the peace through silent intimidation. No one challenged them. No one dared. Stories spread of Terran ships appearing over pirate worlds without warning, of colonies saved from invasion by unseen hands, of fleets that disappeared after crossing the wrong border. The humans never spoke of vengeance again. They didn't need to. The galaxy spoke it for them. Yet even in their strength, some wondered if the cost had been too high. On Earth, cities were rebuilt, but the people walked with quiet eyes. The stars that once symbolized hope now carried the memory of war. Children studied the history of the Sol Wars and asked, "Were we heroes?" Their teachers never gave an answer. Because the truth was not simple. Humanity had saved itself, but in doing so, it had become something new, something colder, sharper, and eternal. Far away, on a ruined world where ashes still fell like snow, a lone Vrackle child stood among the ruins of his home. He looked up at the stars, the same stars that had once burned with human fire, and whispered to the wind. "No one told us what they could do." And somewhere in the quiet black between worlds, a human voice whispered back, "Now you know." 100 years had passed since the Treaty of Ash and Iron. The galaxy had changed, but the fear had not. The stars were quieter now. No great wars, no fleets clashing in fire, only silence and the weight of memory that lingered in every dark corner of space. Children across alien worlds learned the same story at bedtime, the story of the humans. Their parents spoke softly, as if afraid the very word might summon them. "Do not anger the Terrans," they said. "They do not forget, they do not forgive." In the distant colony of Kethar, 2 merchants argued in the marketplace. A border dispute had erupted between their species, old grudges reigniting like dying coals. But when one of them threatened war, the crowd went silent. Someone whispered, "Careful, humans are watching." And the argument ended there. No one knew if the Terrans truly were watching, but no one was willing to find out. Across the galaxy, the United Terran Dominion stretched farther than ever, thousands of worlds, connected by silent fleets that no longer needed to fight. The ghost ships still patrolled the void, unseen but always felt. On every world under their watch, peace was absolute. Trade thrived, crime vanished. And yet there was no joy in this peace, only tension, the kind that came from holding one's breath too long. The galaxy had not been conquered by humanity's armies. It had been conquered by their memory. On Earth, time had softened the scars, but not the truth. Cities glittered again, oceans sparkled blue, and the air was filled with the hum of quiet machines. Yet beneath the peace, humanity had changed. Children grew up hearing stories of the wars that shaped their world. The invasion, the vengeance, the burning of Ortash Prime. But to them it was ancient history, almost myth. They didn't see the fear that still shadowed the stars. Admiral Wood was long gone. But her image remained in every academy, her words etched into every wall. Peace is not given, it is taken, and it must be protected by those strong enough to bear its cost. In the capital of the Dominion, a city built in orbit above Jupiter, the new leader of the Terran fleet, Admiral Cale Marin, stood before a vast holomap of the galaxy. A young officer approached him nervously. "Sir," she said, "we've received a report from the Outer Rim colonies. A mining convoy went missing near the Zath frontier. Locals believe it might be the humans." Cale turned slowly, his dark eyes sharp. "We are the humans, Lieutenant." "I mean someone claiming to be one of us, sir. Unregistered ships. They took the cargo, then disappeared into folded space." Cale frowned, a ghost of a ghost. He looked back at the stars and sighed. "Find them. Even our own kind must remember who we are." For all their power, humanity was beginning to fracture. The peace that had lasted for generations was starting to crack under the weight of silence. Some humans believed they had gone too far, that the Dominion ruled through fear, not justice. They wanted to end the isolation, to open their borders, to make peace in truth, not in terror. Others believed the galaxy still needed to remember who had saved it. They whispered, if they ever forget, they'll try again. And so the fleets remained, silent and watching, a reminder that strength was never optional. On a distant world called Arelos, an alien scholar named Vizhan stood before a classroom of younglings. He spoke in a soft, trembling voice. "Long ago," he began, "there was a species called humanity. They were not like us. They were born from struggle, shaped by storms and pain. When the great empires tried to destroy them, they answered with fire. And when they were victorious, they demanded peace." One child raised her hand. "Teacher, why did they stop fighting after they won?" Vizhan smiled sadly, because they didn't want to become what they fought. Another child frowned, but everyone says they did become monsters. The old scholar sighed, his eyes far away. Maybe, or maybe they just learned that monsters are what the galaxy fears most and what it respects most. Outside, in the red sky of Arelos, a black shadow passed, long and sleek, moving without sound. The children gasped and pressed against the glass. Vizhan lowered his head. "Don't stare," he whispered. "Just pray they keep flying." Even now, centuries later, the Terran fleets were everywhere and nowhere. They did not conquer worlds anymore. They didn't have to. Every empire paid tribute to the Dominion. Every council sought its approval. And those who defied them were erased so cleanly that sometimes not even ruins remained. But deep inside the Terran command, there were doubts. Admiral Cale Marin often sat alone in his quarters, looking out into the void. He thought of Ward's legacy, of the world she had built and the cost it demanded. Was this peace, or just fear stretched across 1,000 suns? He didn't know anymore. One night, Cale received a transmission from an unknown source. No signal ID, no encryption pattern, just static and a voice. A human voice. "Do you remember why we fought, Admiral?" Cale froze. The voice was old, rough, full of echoes. "We fought because they took everything. We swore we'd never let it happen again. But look around you. Look what we've become." Then the signal cut off. Cale stood for a long time in silence. Was it a ghost, a rebel, a lie? It didn't matter. The message was true. Humanity had survived. But it had lost something along the way. On the world once called Ortash Prime, now renamed Ward's Rest, the burned soil had begun to bloom again. A monument stood at the heart of its capital, a single pillar of black stone, carved with words in both human and Vrackle script. "We do not forgive. We do not forget. But we do remember." Pilgrims came from every race to see it. Some bowed, some wept, some simply stared in silence. And at night, when the twin moons rose over the quiet fields, people swore they could see lights in the sky, faint, distant, moving slowly through the dark. Human ships watching still. Generations later, the galaxy would call this age the Long Silence. An era without wars, without rebellion, without hope or chaos. It was peace built on the memory of fire. And though no human voice had shouted in anger for a century, the stars themselves seemed to whisper one message to all who listened closely enough. Do not wake the Earthborn. Because somewhere, hidden behind the veil of folded space, the fleets of humanity still waited, silent, patient, eternal. The galaxy had learned to live beneath their shadow. And that shadow had a name that no one dared speak aloud. Humanity. The galaxy had known peace for 500 years. No wars, no rebellions, no cries of defiance. Only the quiet hum of trade routes and the whisper of fear that lived in every star system. The United Terran Dominion had not spoken in generations. Their fleet still moved through the dark, silent as ghosts, but their banners were rarely seen. Even the youngest species, those who had never known the Sol Wars, grew up with the same warnings their ancestors once whispered. Do not awaken the humans. And so the galaxy obeyed. It lived, it prospered, but it never forgot. On a forgotten planet at the edge of the Orion Spur, an old alien scholar named Kethrin Val searched through ancient ruins. He was a historian from the Thren Collective, a people who believed that truth should outlive fear. For decades, he had studied the Terrans, their rise, their wrath, their silence. But the more he learned, the less sense it made. How could a species that had once burned worlds vanish so completely? No new transmissions, no new colonies, no new leaders. Only silence. That silence haunted him. So he came here, to an abandoned outpost once marked as Terran territory. The records called it Sol's Sentinel-01. It was old, centuries old, but its power core still pulsed faintly like a dying heart. Inside the base, dust hung in the air like ghosts. Every console was dark, every corridor empty. Yet as Kethrin walked, his translator implant began to flicker, struggling to keep up with the strange, ancient human code that still lingered in the air. And then he saw it, an old command terminal flickering with life. On the screen, one word pulsed softly in English, a language no one had spoken in centuries. Play. He hesitated. The story said Terran AI still guarded their secrets. But his heart ached with curiosity stronger than fear. He touched the key, and the galaxy's last secret began to speak. The screen came alive with static, then with the faint outline of a human face, aged, tired, and yet unmistakably resolute. The voice was calm, deep, almost gentle. To whoever finds this message, you live in a galaxy we built with fire. Kethrin's breath caught, the face continued. We were not gods, we were not demons, we were simply what you made us. When you came to our world, you called us animals. You took our skis and burned our cities. And so we became the thing you feared most, humanity unchained. The image flickered, showing flashes of war, burning worlds, ships made of steel and fury, the fall of Ortash Prime. We did not fight for conquest, the voice went on. We fought for memory, for every voice silenced, for every child lost. And when the galaxy surrendered, we built a peace that would never break again. Kethrin leaned closer, his heart raced. He whispered, "Is this Admiral Ward?" The recording paused, then continued, her voice colder now. We swore never to strike first again, but we also swore never to forget what happens when we are underestimated. So we watched. We listened. And when the galaxy learned to live in peace, we stepped away. The scene changed. The stars filled the screen, beautiful, endless. And there, floating among them, were the dark silhouettes of Terran ships. Thousands of them, drifting silently in formation. By the time you hear this, Ward said, we are gone. Humanity has left the galaxy. Kethrin gasped aloud, gone how, where? We go beyond the rim, into the dark between galaxies, the message continued. The universe is wide, and our purpose here is complete. The Dominion remains behind only as a guardian, machines that remember what we stood for. They will defend this peace, but they will never speak, never intervene. Only watch. The hologram flickered again, and Ward's expression softened. For the first time, her voice carried warmth. If you are watching this, it means the galaxy has grown brave again, brave enough to seek us. I hope that means you have learned what we never could, that peace without fear is possible. But if it is not, then remember this. We will come back. The recording shimmered. For a heartbeat, Kethrin thought he saw more than a face. He saw a fleet, countless ships in a sea of stars, engines burning brighter than suns. And then the screen went black. Only one line of text appeared below the fading light. We are human, we are eternal. Kethrin sat in silence. His translator implant buzzed softly, replaying fragments of the message over and over. He felt awe, fear, wonder. They hadn't died, they hadn't vanished. They had simply moved on, leaving the galaxy to remember and to tremble. He stumbled out of the outpost into the open air. The night sky stretched above him, a tapestry of 1,000,000,000 stars. He looked up and whispered, "You left us your peace, but you also left us your shadow." And as if in answer, a faint light moved across the heavens. Slow, silent, straight. A shape of black metal against the stars. A Terran ship. Still watching. When Kethrin returned to the Thren capital, his discovery spread like wildfire. The Great Council convened to discuss it. Some rejoiced, calling the humans gods who had blessed the galaxy with eternal peace. Others trembled, fearing their return. One young leader asked the question that silenced them all. If they left, why are their ships still here? No one had an answer. But every telescope that turned toward the void saw the same thing. Movement at the edge of the galaxy. Shapes massive and slow, drifting beyond the reach of any signal. Some said it was a trick of light. Others said it was the ghosts of the Terran fleets, still keeping their silent vigil. Decades later, as Kethrin lay on his deathbed, he looked out through his window at the stars. He smiled faintly, whispering to the night, "We feared you once, we worshipped you after. But maybe in the end you were just human." A faint glimmer passed across the horizon, like a single ship moving through the dark. His eyes closed, and the galaxy's oldest historian breathed his last. But far beyond, in the cold silence between galaxies, a transmission pulsed once more, a signal that traveled faster than light, carrying a single phrase written in every known tongue. "The Guardians sleep, the stars are safe. Do not awaken us unless the darkness returns." And though no one ever traced its source, the message spread like a heartbeat through the cosmos. The civilizations of the galaxy paused, listening to the words that came from nowhere, and felt that ancient shiver return. Because they all knew who it was. The first, the last. The ones who had fought gods and become them. The humans. Epilogue. 1,000 years later, explorers from a young species named Lyran reached the edge of the galactic rim. There, beyond the last cluster of stars, they found it, a vast armada of silent ships floating like statues in the dark. Their hulls bore no markings but one, carved in every language ever spoken. "We came in peace. You brought us war. We answered." And as the explorers turned their ships around and fled back toward home, one of them whispered into the dark. "No one told them what humans could do.